The scrapyard stretched as far as the eye could see, a graveyard of forgotten machines, rusting metals, and discarded war relics. Towers of broken drones and decommissioned starships stood in silence, whispering tales of battles long past. The air smelled of oil, metal dust, and damp rust. Kai Mercer wiped the sweat from his brow and kicked a piece of shattered plating aside. He had been scavenging for parts all morning, searching for anything useful to fix his broken hoverbike. The scrapyard belonged to Jump Point 47, a human colony on the edge of known space. Life here was simple: fix things, trade parts, and survive. As he walked deeper into the yard, his eyes caught something strange, a massive shape buried under old cargo containers. It was a human battlesuit, an old one. The Vindicator-class combat armor, once considered the pride of the First Galactic War, now lay forgotten, covered in dust and corrosion. Kay's breath caught. His grandfather had once spoken about these suits, calling them the last real warriors before machines took over. He stepped closer, running his hands over the thick armor plating. The once glorious black and gold paint was chipped, revealing battle scars from long-forgotten fights. "Why is this here?" Kai muttered. Most old human war machines were scrapped or stored in military museums. This one should not be in a junkyard. As he inspected the chest plate, his fingers traced a small engraving. M. Mercer, 17th Infantry Division. His heart pounded. No way. This suit had belonged to his grandfather, Malcolm Mercer, a decorated war hero. Kai had grown up hearing stories about him, how he had fought against the Kselvok Empire, how he had led impossible missions, and how he had refused to rely on artificial intelligence to make decisions for him. And yet, here it was, abandoned like a worthless relic. Kai glanced around. The scrapyard workers were too busy to notice him. He needed to see if this thing still worked. Using a crowbar, he pried open the back panel of the suit. The fusion core was dead, but when he checked the auxiliary systems, a weak signal flickered on the power display. The machine was still alive. Excitement rushed through him. If he could fix it, he wouldn't just be restoring an old suit, he'd be reviving a piece of history. But before he could do anything, a rough voice interrupted. "You planning to fix that junk, Mercer?" Kai turned to see Reth Jorgen, a massive four-armed alien from the scrapyard staff. His species, the Bracker, were known for their strength and brutal sense of humor. Jorgen crossed his thick arms, his sharp teeth flashing in a smirk. "That thing's older than your grandpa's ghost. Waste of time." Kai ignored him, running his fingers over the main console. "It's not just any old suit. It belonged to my grandfather." Jorgen scoffed. "So, humans are always sentimental about dead things. That rust bucket won't save you if trouble comes." Kai knew Jorgen wasn't wrong. Modern military machines were faster, stronger, and AI-driven. The old Vindicator-class suits had been retired because no one trusted humans to pilot them anymore. Still, something inside him refused to let it go. "Maybe," Kai said, standing up, "but I'm going to fix it." Jorgen snorted. "You really think you can bring it back?" Kai didn't answer. He just grinned. That night, long after the scrapyard had closed, Kai snuck back with a portable power cell. He connected the cables, his hands trembling with anticipation. The moment he activated the auxiliary system, a deep hum vibrated through the metal. A weak, flickering blue light appeared on the suit's visor. It was still alive. Kai grinned. They called it obsolete. Let's prove them wrong. The night air was cold, but Kai Mercer barely noticed. His heart pounded as he watched the old Vindicator battlesuit flicker to life. The blue glow from its visor cast eerie shadows across the scrapyard. The hum of the machinery, once silent for decades, now vibrated through the metal frame. Kai wiped his hands on his jumpsuit, excitement bubbling inside him. He had done it. He had awakened a machine that everyone believed was useless. But there was still a long way to go. Powering up a suit and making it fully functional were two different things. He ran a quick diagnostic check using the manual console on the suit's arm. Most of the primary systems were still offline. The fusion core was completely dead, and the mobility servos were rusted beyond repair. But the auxiliary power was still running, which meant one thing: the neural link might still work. Kai hesitated. The neural link system was an old human technology, abandoned long ago in favor of AI-assisted combat. Unlike modern systems, which let the machine do most of the thinking, the Vindicator-class suit relied on the pilot's instincts and reflexes. It was a dangerous and demanding technology. If the connection failed, it could burn out the pilot's mind. Kai took a deep breath. There was only one way to find out. He climbed into the suit, securing himself inside the pilot chamber. The interior smelled of old metal and faded battle memories. His fingers hovered over the controls, feeling the rough edges of the manual switches. All right, let's do this. He activated the neural interface. At first, nothing happened. Then, a sudden shock surged through his body. His vision blurred, and 1,000 ghostly memories rushed into his mind. He saw old battles, heard the distant roar of explosions, felt the weight of a war long past. And then, a voice. Mercer. Kai gasped, his hands tightening on the controls. It wasn't a real voice. It was a recording, an old echo from the suit's memory. The voice belonged to his grandfather. If you're hearing this, then the war isn't over yet. Kai's breath caught in his throat. His grandfather's last mission had been a mystery. He had never returned, and the military had never explained why. Had the answers been inside this suit all along? The memory faded, and Kai forced himself to focus. The neural link was stable. The suit's systems were still registering his brain signals, which meant he could control it if he could restore full power. He checked the power grid again. The fusion core was beyond saving. But there was another option. The backup energy source, an ancient experimental power core designed for emergency use. It was still connected to the suit, buried deep within its frame. Kai quickly accessed the internal system. A warning flashed across the visor. Warning. Power core activation may be unstable. Proceed. Kai grinned. Let's take the risk. He pressed the activation switch. For a moment, silence. Then, boom. A massive shockwave burst from the suit, sending sparks flying across the scrapyard. The entire battlesuit trembled, its armor plates shifting as long-dormant mechanisms roared back to life. The Vindicator stood up. Kai felt weightless inside the suit. The power surge connected to his nervous system, making the armor feel like an extension of his own body. He took a step forward, and the suit responded smoothly, effortlessly, as if it had never been broken. His heart pounded with excitement. It works. But his celebration was cut short. A loud alarm blared across the scrapyard. Kai turned, his visor scanning the horizon. Bright red warning lights flashed over the security towers. Something was coming. His visor's HUD quickly locked onto several incoming signals, unfamiliar alien warships approaching the colony at high speed. The HFY Empire. Kai's thoughts raced. The Vindicator had been his grandfather's legacy, a powerful weapon forged during a time of war. But it was still incomplete. There was more hidden in its systems, more that he hadn't unlocked yet. And now, with the HFY fleet still out there, he needed every advantage he could get. His hand hovered over the suit's console. He was exhausted, but he couldn't afford to rest. Not yet. Let's see what else you've got. Kai activated the Vindicator's internal systems. As the suit powered up again, a series of new options appeared on his visor. There were protocols buried deep within the machine, things his grandfather had kept hidden. But why? He had unlocked the neural amplifier, and now it seemed there was a second level to the suit's capabilities, a combat mode that enhanced his reflexes even further. But it came at a cost. The warning on his visor flashed. Warning. Neural overload imminent. Proceed with caution. Kai hesitated. The strain he had already placed on his body was immense. If he pushed any further, he might not survive. But the thought of the Selvok returning and finishing what they had started drove him forward. He couldn't allow that to happen. We don't have a choice. With a deep breath, Kai activated the next level of the suit's combat mode. The energy core inside the Vindicator hummed louder, and the systems whirred to life. The suit seemed to respond to his very thoughts, almost as if it understood his determination. Kai's vision sharpened. The world around him slowed to a crawl, the movements of everything and everyone becoming almost exaggerated. He could see the wind blowing through the scraps of the battlefield, the small flickers of light from the retreating ships, the very heartbeat of the humans behind him. But it wasn't just the external world that slowed, it was his body too. His muscles, his senses, his reflexes, they were all enhanced beyond anything he had ever experienced. He could feel it. The Vindicator was no longer just a machine. It was a part of him. Kai clenched his fists. Let's finish this. With a burst of speed, he shot forward, his legs propelling him faster than any normal human should be able to run. He reached the top of the scrapyard's tallest pile of debris and surveyed the area. The Selvok fleet was still retreating, but they were circling back, preparing for another attack. Kai knew he had to act fast. He activated the Vindicator's long-range cannons, adjusting the targeting system with ease. The reticle on his visor locked onto the largest of the retreating ships. The Vindicator's cannons fired, sending a powerful shot toward the enemy ship. The blast hit its target, causing the ship to shudder and veering off course. But it wasn't enough. There were more ships, and they were readying their next strike. Kai turned to the humans behind him. Get to cover. Prepare for a counterattack. The civilians scrambled, rushing toward the underground bunkers and hiding behind whatever debris they could find. The battle was far from over, and Kai knew this time he wouldn't be alone. The Vindicator's energy core hummed louder, its power pushing Kai's body beyond anything he had ever imagined. The next wave of Selvok ships was coming, and he was ready to meet them head-on. With one last look at the horizon, Kai activated the Vindicator's final combat mode, a self-destruct system designed for last-ditch efforts. It wasn't just a weapon. It was a signal, a sign to the Selvok that humans would never back down. They would fight until the end. Let's end this once and for all. Kai Mercer was no longer just a man in an old suit of armor. He had become a symbol. And today, the Vindicator's legend would continue. Kai stood tall in the Vindicator battlesuit, the ground shaking beneath his feet as the next wave of Selvok warships descended from the sky. The battle had only intensified since the destruction of the dreadnought, and Kai knew that the enemy would stop at nothing to wipe out the human resistance. But he wasn't afraid. He was ready. The energy core inside the suit hummed with power, its neural amplifier pushing Kai's reflexes to their absolute limits. His muscles still ached from the earlier battle, but he had no time to rest. The humans were depending on him. He glanced toward the colony. Jump Point 47. Once a small, quiet outpost, now the front line of humanity's fight for survival. The humans had rallied, inspired by Kai's courage, but they were still no match for the overwhelming might of the Selvok Empire. The Vindicator was humanity's last hope. Kai's blood ran cold. The same enemy his grandfather had fought against. And now, they were here. This was no coincidence. They weren't just attacking Jump Point 47. They were coming for the Vindicator. Kai clenched his fists. They think this old suit is useless. Let's show them how wrong they are. The ground shook as the Selvok warships descended through the thick, dark sky, their engines roaring like distant thunder. Bright red warning lights flashed all over Jump Point 47, signaling an emergency. People screamed and ran for cover, knowing that the alien invaders were not here for peace. Kai Mercer tightened his grip inside the Vindicator battlesuit, his heartbeat thundering in his ears. The ancient machine responded to his movements with surprising precision, as if it had never been shut down. He stood at the edge of the scrapyard, watching the enemy forces land with precision and force. The HFY soldiers, tall and armored in sleek, dark battle gear, marched forward. Their glowing yellow eyes scanned the area, their weapons humming with energy. At the center of their formation stood a commanding figure, larger than the rest. Commander Vortak, a notorious war leader. His voice echoed through the colony's communication system. "Humans, surrender the machine. You are unworthy of such power." Kay's fists clenched inside the Vindicator's armored gauntlets. He had no doubt what they wanted. They had come for the battlesuit, for its forgotten power. And they weren't going to get it. He moved forward, the Vindicator's heavy footsteps shaking the ground beneath him. The moment the HFY saw him, they hesitated, not out of fear, but confusion. They didn't expect the obsolete machine to be operational. Kai smirked inside the helmet. "Hey, Vortak," he shouted, his voice amplified through the suit's external speakers. "You want this? Come and get it." Without waiting for a response, he charged. The Vindicator's servos roared, sending him forward faster than any machine its age should have been able to. The first wave of HFY soldiers barely had time to react before Kai smashed into them, sending their bodies flying with brutal force. Blaster fire erupted. Red energy bolts shot toward him from all directions. But the Vindicator's old armor plating was different from modern war machines. It wasn't just metal. It was a forgotten human alloy, resistant to modern plasma weapons. The shots sizzled against the plating but failed to penetrate. Kai grinned. Guess they don't make 'em like they used to. The HFY realized their mistake too late. Kai was inside a relic of war, one built before the era of AI-controlled combat, before humans had allowed machines to fight their battles for them. This wasn't just any suit. This was the last of the human warriors. Kai grabbed an enemy soldier by the arm and threw him into another. Sparks flew as alien armor cracked under the Vindicator's strength. The battlefield turned into chaos. The humans who had been hiding now saw something they never thought they'd see again. One of their own, standing up against the invaders. Some of the colony's defenders, armed with basic weapons, rushed to help, inspired by the sight. The Vindicator wasn't just a machine anymore. It was hope. Kai dodged a blast, then spun and slammed his metal fist into an enemy's chest plate, denting it instantly. He felt the battle instincts of his grandfather guiding him, the neural link enhancing his movements. Vortak, still standing back, watched in growing frustration. This wasn't how the battle was supposed to go. With a snarl, he barked a command. "Deploy the Titan-class hunter." A low rumble filled the air. Then, from the warship's loading bay, a massive machine stepped out. Kay's breath caught. The Titan-class hunter was a state-of-the-art war mech, far larger than the Vindicator. Its quad-barreled plasma cannons hummed with energy, and its thick, reinforced armor gleamed under the planet's weak sun. For the first time, doubt crept into Kay's mind. He kicked the Vindicator into high gear, launching himself at the incoming ship. The sheer speed of his movements stunned even him. The HFY were not used to humans moving at this pace. A hail of blaster fire erupted from the dreadnought's defenses, but Kai dodged every shot. His movements were so quick, it seemed like the enemy was firing in slow motion. "You're not taking this place." Kai felt the adrenaline surge through his veins as he closed the distance to the dreadnought, its massive bulk towering above him. The ship's cannon barrels turned to fire again, but he was already there. In a blur of motion, Kai jumped onto the ship's surface, using the Vindicator's thrusters to propel himself upward. He grabbed onto the side of the hull, his fingers tightening on the durable metal as he climbed. The HFY soldiers on the dreadnought fired relentlessly, but they couldn't hit him. He was too fast, too unpredictable. Kai reached the ship's core, where its main power conduits were located. He knew this was a risk. If the power core went critical, it could take the entire fleet with it. But at this point, he had no choice. Kai slammed his fist into the ship's hull, ripping open a panel and exposing the core. He could see the high-energy plasma swirling inside, waiting to be unleashed. Goodbye. Kai punched through the last layer of metal, his fist connecting with the core. There was a sudden explosion of energy, and the ship shuddered violently. He barely had time to react. Kai jumped off the ship, his thrusters activating as he flew backward. The dreadnought began to break apart, its power core overloaded. The explosion was deafening, sending shockwaves through the battlefield. As the Selvok forces watched in horror, Kai landed back on the ground, breathing heavily. The dreadnought had been destroyed, but the battle was far from over. The remaining enemy ships were still closing in, their weapons charging once again. But Kai was done running. He stood tall in the Vindicator, his stance defiant. He was ready for whatever came next. The Excelvok commander, Vortak, snarled in frustration as his troops scattered in retreat. But Kai was far from finished. The final blow had not yet been struck. Kai's voice crackled through the battlefield's comms. "I'm not letting this go." The remaining Selvok ships hesitated, unsure whether to continue the assault or retreat. They had never expected one human soldier in an old suit of armor to fight like this. They had never believed humans were capable of such a fierce stand. But now, the battle was about more than just the Vindicator. It was about defiance, human strength in the face of impossible odds. Kai raised his fist to the sky, his voice steady and filled with purpose. "This is our world, and I'll fight to protect it." The Excelvok forces, now realizing the humans were not the easy targets they had assumed, began to retreat. But Kai knew the war wasn't over. They had only won this battle. The real fight was just beginning. And humanity, with the Vindicator by their side, was ready to rise once more. The battlefield was eerily silent after the explosion. The remnants of the dreadnought floated in space, a massive wreckage drifting in the quiet aftershock of its destruction. The Excelvok forces, once so confident in their victory, were now retreating in disarray. They had underestimated humans, and that mistake had cost them dearly. Kai Mercer stood in the middle of the scrapyard, his Vindicator battlesuit still intact, but showing signs of damage from the intense battle. His breath came in slow, controlled gasps. The neural amplifier was still active, but the strain on his body was beginning to show. His muscles ached, and his head felt heavy. But he wasn't finished. Not yet. Behind him, the humans of Jump Point 47 gathered, their faces full of awe and disbelief. The battle had seemed impossible, but now they were witnessing a miracle. A human, standing alone in a suit of ancient armor, had held back an alien invasion. Kai looked up at the sky. The remaining Selvok warships were retreating, but he knew this was only a temporary victory. The Excelvok were not known for their mercy. They would regroup, and they would come back stronger. He turned to the people behind him, his voice steady but filled with urgency. "We can't stop now. The battle isn't over. The Excelvok will return. We need to prepare." The people around him nodded, their fear slowly turning into determination. They had seen what one human could do with the right tools, and the Vindicator was more than just a machine. It was a symbol of human resilience, of refusing to give up, no matter the odds. Could the Vindicator really stand against something that powerful? He had no time to decide. The Hunter mech raised its cannons, aiming directly at him. A blinding flash erupted as it fired. Kai barely had a second to react before the world exploded around him. A blinding explosion ripped through the scrapyard, sending flames and debris flying in all directions. The Titan-class Hunter's plasma cannons had unleashed a devastating blast, aiming to destroy the Vindicator in one strike. For a moment, everything was silent. Then, from the thick smoke, a metallic figure emerged. Kai was still standing. The Vindicator's ancient armor, thought to be weak and outdated, had absorbed most of the damage. The secret alloy used in its construction had withstood modern plasma weapons far better than expected. Inside the suit, Kai's breath was heavy. His head pounded from the neural link strain, but he was alive. The Excelvox soldiers stared in disbelief. The Vindicator should have been destroyed. No modern machine could have survived that blast. But this wasn't a modern machine. It was built in an era when humans still believed in raw durability over AI-assisted agility. Kai took a step forward, his armor plating still glowing from the heat. His voice echoed through the battlefield. "Is that all you've got?" Commander Vortak snarled, his yellow eyes narrowing. He had underestimated the human's relic of war. With a sharp gesture, he ordered, "Engage full attack mode. Tear that thing apart." The Titan-class hunter charged forward, its massive mechanical arms smashing through piles of wreckage. Kai barely had time to react before a metal fist the size of a boulder swung at him. The impact sent him flying, crashing through a ruined starship. The Vindicator's armor groaned under the pressure, but still, it did not break. Kai groaned in pain but quickly pushed himself up. He couldn't afford to lose focus. His mind raced. The Vindicator was strong, but not invincible. If he kept taking direct hits like that, the armor would eventually fail. He needed a strategy. As the Titan-class hunter stomped toward him, Kai's HUD flickered, revealing a hidden system buried deep in the Vindicator's memory. A forgotten protocol. Something his grandfather must have intentionally locked away. Kai's heart pounded as he accessed the file. A holographic message appeared inside his helmet. It was his grandfather, Malcolm Mercer. "If you're seeing this, it means the Vindicator has been reactivated." Kai froze, listening. The war ended before this machine could be used to its full potential. But there's something the military never knew, something I never told them. The Vindicator's core isn't just a power source. It's an experimental neural amplifier, one that enhances human reflexes beyond normal limits. It was meant to replace eye-controlled combat, making the pilot faster and deadlier than any machine. Kai's eyes widened. That meant, if he activated it, he could fight at speeds no Excelvox machine could match. But there was a risk. His grandfather's voice turned serious. The neural amplifier was never tested to full capacity. It will push your body beyond its limits. If you aren't strong enough, it could kill you. Kai swallowed hard. He didn't have a choice. The Titan-class hunter was nearly on top of him, its cannons charging up again for another devastating blast. Kai took a deep breath. "Let's do this." He activated the neural amplifier. The moment he did, everything changed. The world slowed down. The Excelvox mech's movements became sluggish, as if trapped in thick liquid. Kai could see every detail, the flickering energy inside its cannon, the way its joints shifted, the weak points in its armor. And then, he looked up as the ships neared. Vortak, the Excelvox commander, was determined to finish what he had started. Kai clenched his fists. He wasn't going to let that happen. "This is it," he whispered to himself, his voice steady. Without hesitation, Kai activated the Vindicator's thrusters and launched himself toward the enemy ships. He felt the rush of wind and the burning energy of the suit as it propelled him forward faster than he had ever moved before. The Excelvox ships were massive, their weapons aimed at the colony. Kai didn't have much time. He dodged a barrage of laser fire, the world around him slowing to a crawl as his mind processed every movement. The Excelvox didn't know it yet, but they had just made a fatal mistake. They had underestimated a human. Kai closed the distance between him and the enemy fleet, his heart racing with the sheer speed and precision of his actions. He reached the first ship in the fleet and slammed into its outer hull with a force that sent a shockwave through the ship. The Vindicator's cannons fired without Kai needing to aim, sending a barrage of plasma blasts straight through the ship's shields and into its core. The ship exploded, breaking apart in a cloud of smoke and fire. Kai didn't stop there. He turned and rocketed toward the next ship, his movements fluid and precise. The neural amplifier was working overtime, and the Vindicator's systems responded as if they were part of him. He felt like he was one with the suit. Every movement, every decision was instinctive, driven by his will to protect his people. Kai continued his assault, tearing through the HFY fleet one ship at a time. The alien soldiers inside the ships scrambled to retaliate, but they were no match for him. His enhanced speed, reflexes, and strength made him an unstoppable force. As he destroyed ship after ship, Kai couldn't help but think of his grandfather. Malcolm Mercer had fought for humanity in the First Galactic War, but the old man had never seen a fight like this. If only he could see what Kai was doing now. If only he could see how his legacy had become a symbol of hope for the humans of Jump Point 47. With every explosion, with every ship he destroyed, Kai was not just fighting for survival. He was fighting for the future of his people. And he was proving, with every move, that humans were more than just survivors. They were warriors. But as the last of the HFY ships began to fall, Kai realized something. The battle wasn't over. In the distance, he saw Vortak, the HFY commander, retreating aboard a massive warship. It was their final weapon, a massive ship capable of wiping out entire planets. If it reached the colony, it would be game over for humanity. Kai's pulse quickened. He had to stop it. With a single determined movement, Kai launched himself toward the warship. His thrusters burned brightly as he soared through the air, heading straight for the heart of the enemy fleet. The Vindicator's systems hummed with energy, and the neural amplifier pushed his body to its limit. "I won't let you win," he muttered, his voice filled with resolve. He reached the warship's outer hull and used the Vindicator's laser cutters to slice through the thick metal. Inside, the ship was swarming with HFY soldiers, but Kai was faster than they could react. He cut through them like a blade through water, his sword-like arm blades tearing into their ranks with ease. Finally, he reached the central command chamber, and there, standing before him, was Vortak, the HFY commander. The alien leader sneered at Kai, his eyes glowing with fury. "You think you can stop me, human?" Vortak growled. Kai didn't answer. He raised the Vindicator's plasma sword, the blade crackling with energy. He was done talking. With a single, swift strike, Kai cut through the alien commander's defenses and pierced his heart. Vortak fell, and the ship began to shake as the control systems went offline. Kai turned and raced toward the ship's core. It was time to end this for good. He planted an explosive charge in the ship's engine room, then rocketed away, using every ounce of energy to escape. As he looked back, the warship detonated, sending a shockwave through the HFY fleet. The remaining ships began to retreat, knowing they had lost. Kai's mission was complete. The battle was won. As the humans of Jump Point 47 cheered, Kai stood in the wreckage, panting heavily. He was exhausted, his body aching, his energy drained, but he had done it. He had saved them, and the Vindicator's legend would live on for generations to come. Humanity wasn't just surviving, it was thriving, and the universe would soon know that no one could stand against them. Because the legend of humanity had only just begun, time snapped back to normal. But Kai wasn't moving at normal speed anymore. The Vindicator reacted instantly, his body moving faster than any human had ever fought before. Before the Titan-class hunter could fire, Kai launched forward, dodging its attack with inhuman speed. The HFY commander's eyes widened in shock. No AI, no advanced targeting system, just pure human instinct, enhanced to its absolute limit. Kai leaped onto the Titan-class hunter's back, his metal fist slamming into its power conduit. Sparks erupted as the massive machine staggered, trying to shake him off. But Kai was too fast. He ripped open a panel and drove his fist straight into the mech's energy core. The Titan-class hunter jerked violently, its systems overloading in a storm of fire and electricity. For a moment, everything was still. Then, the HFY war machine collapsed, crashing into the scrapyard with a deafening boom. Silence followed. The HFY soldiers, stunned and terrified, froze in place. Kai stood atop the wreckage, the Vindicator's visor glowing bright blue in the dust-filled air. He raised his head and spoke, his voice steady and unshaken. "Tell your commander," he said, staring directly at the remaining Selvok forces. "The Vindicator isn't obsolete. It's a legend." The aliens turned and fled, retreating toward their warships in a panic. As the Selvok forces abandoned the battlefield, the humans of Jump Point 47 slowly stepped out of hiding, staring in awe. For years, they had been told that human warriors were a thing of the past, that no one could stand against the might of modern alien armies. But tonight, they had witnessed something different. They had seen a single human, one man, in an old machine, defy an empire. And in that moment, hope was reborn. Kai Mercer looked up at the stars, his hands tightening in the Vindicator's controls. This was just the beginning. Because now, the universe would remember. Humans weren't weak. They were legends. The ground still trembled from the explosion, and the air was thick with smoke. Kai Mercer stood in the middle of the scrapyard, his chest heaving inside the Vindicator battlesuit. The Titan-class hunter lay in pieces at his feet, the enemy war machine destroyed. The Selvok forces, once confident in their victory, now stood frozen, unsure of what to do. Kay's hands gripped the suit's controls, his mind racing. His neural amplifier still hummed, the aftereffects of the immense speed and power he'd just experienced. Every movement felt sharper, every breath deeper. He had pushed himself to the limit, but his body hadn't failed him. As the remaining Selvok soldiers hesitated, Kay's voice rang out across the battlefield. "I'm not done yet." The Selvok commander, Vortak, was not one to give up so easily. He barked out an order, and reinforcements began to drop down from their warships. This time, however, they were not sending mere-foot soldiers. They were bringing the big guns. Kai looked up. The dark skies were filled with more ships than he'd ever seen. The Selvok were bringing everything they had to crush him and his people. But Kai wasn't afraid. His eyes narrowed behind the Vindicator's visor. They wanted to take the Vindicator. They would have to fight for it. He felt the hum of the Vindicator's energy core, still functioning despite the battle damage. The suit's systems were far from perfect, but they were strong enough. And with the neural amplifier, he could move faster than ever before. The Selvok ships began to drop their latest weapon, the Dreadnought, a massive, heavily armored warship that dwarfed all the others. The ship's guns charged with energy, ready to level the entire colony. Kai knew he had to act fast. Time to end this.